Burnaby North.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I rise to speak in favour of Bill 48, the Labour Statutes Amendment Act. It's been almost a year since the Premier invited me to serve as the Parliamentary Secretary for Labour in his government. Not the Parliamentary Secretary of Labour, not the Parliamentary Secretary about Labour. I'm the Parliamentary Secretary for Labour. And a few months ago, I was at an event. The MC, it was emceed by someone whose English was not his first language, probably not his second, or maybe even his third language. And he introduced me as the Parliamentary Secretary for Working People. And I was touched by that. And it since then reminds me of my values, and it has served as a frame of reference within which I do my job. My mandate letter specifically relates to this bill. It states that I am to continue work to develop a precarious work strategy that reflects the diverse needs and unique situations of today's workers and workplaces. Propose employment standards and other protections relevant to app-based ride-hail and food delivery drivers. Review labor policy innovations in other jurisdictions related to the emerging economy and precarious work to identify trends that may inform the development of labor policy in British Columbia. This proposed bill is an important benchmark in the fulfillment of my mandate as Parliamentary Secretary for Labour. Earlier in this debate, the leader of the third party speculated that we were probably heavily lobbied by app-based companies. I want to tell you that I have met with and heard from countless ride-hail and food delivery drivers, including more than 1,000 emails that I've received from them. And they told me shocking and heartbreaking stories about their working conditions. I discovered, contrary to popular public opinion, that this is not a side hustle for most app-based drivers. This is how they are trying to make a living, feed their families, pay the rent or mortgage, put food on the table, and make life better for themselves and their families here in Canada. And they are struggling, as are so many working families right now. The high cost of housing and food, inflation is taking its toll on most people, but it's particularly hard for app-based drivers to make ends meet and maintain a quality of life. They told me that they regularly work 6 or 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Now, that can't be safe. And in the end, are paid less than minimum wage. Some have even been sending me screenshots of their final pay. One screenshot was $4.05 for a 29-minute assignment, and that included the tip. They told me about mysterious fees being deducted from their pay. They told me about tips being kept by the app company. One driver told me that he is now driving taxi because his wife told him it's me or Uber, and he chose his wife. I heard a lot about being fired for no reason and no explanation. It's called discontinuation. The app discontinues them. I was one of the top drivers for one of the ride-hail companies. Told me about being discontinued, and he couldn't get an explanation. He kept phoning the call center. The call center was in another country. They didn't know why he'd been discontinued. He kept calling, and he was told to basically stop pestering them. 2 weeks later, he was reinstated because it was a case of mistaken identity. They meant to fire somebody else. But that didn't mean that he got his 2 weeks compensation back. He was out that money that he lost, that income that he lost for 2 weeks. Another driver told me he was discontinued because he refused to take an unaccompanied baby, and the mother gave him a bad review, and therefore he was discontinued. So I just want to point out that the bill is informed by the experiences of the drivers themselves. I'd like to share, just in their own words, a few of the things that they've told me. In the words of one ride-hail driver, I've been working as a ride-hail driver since I came to Vancouver, and I have done more than 15,000 trips. That's a big number. At the beginning, I thought they were taking a 25% cut out of the whole amount paid by the customer, but it surprised me when I spoke with the customer, and she told me she was being charged $105 for a trip. I only received $54. And since then, I started calculating, and it shocked me that this seemed like a scam. They cut more than 50% out of every trip if you calculate it and get all the information. I got lots of emails to that effect. This driver also talked about the problem of being fired for no reason, and he concludes his email by saying, "Please help. Your people need you because they have families to feed." Another driver told me that he's been driving for the last 3 or 4 years, but the standards are very low, the pay is very low, and the company keeps more than 50% itself, and sometimes less than basic pay in BC. So I request that you do something to make it a real job so people can survive on it. I'll just read one little piece from quite a lengthy description of what their working conditions are like. In summary, the current state of working for app delivery in Canada has become increasingly challenging, with drivers facing disrespect from various parties, inadequate compensation, and unfavorable working conditions. I strongly believe that it is the best interest of all stakeholders to address these issues promptly. Another driver told me that in an email, I believe that drivers who work for a whole week deserve the option of benefits, even if the employers have to split the costs. This should be decided by the employer if they want to benefit or not. Drivers deserve a quarterly report on where the money goes. 25% per trip is a huge chunk of money, and since the drivers have earned it, they deserve a report on where it goes. Another point that this driver made is drivers only get reimbursed for cleaning fees if it provides bodily fluids, which equals $150. Finally, they only pay what was quoted if a trip was quoted 15 minutes, but then takes 45 minutes during rush hour. We're not compensated for that difference, meaning a driver takes about $9 to $10 for that trip that now took 45 minutes. And so those are some of the examples. I mean, there's a lot of examples. Like I say, I got more than 1,000 emails about it. But there's other examples that from some of these emails I got that provide the complication of what we're dealing with. For example, this one driver said, "As a BC resident, I would like to have the flexibility to work as a driver at any time and the trips that I would like to do. I also like the government to interfere and set fixed costs per each trip, pickup, drop-off, parking charges, distance traveled. The company is not paying enough fare for the trips to the drivers." So the point is that this is a driver, like many drivers, who made a point of saying they want to keep the flexibility. This driver has said, "Please keep the delivery job flexibility for when, whether, or how. If the BC government makes changes, keep the flexibility. Any change should not put any cap on flexibility regarding when, where, or how much time one can do the job. There should be minimum wage too. So they're looking for both, and I get that, and that's what we're trying to do. This driver has said, I've been driving for about 3 years now. I love the flexibility it gives me, and I would hate any government intervention that would remove this flexibility. While I'm all for improving the wages and protect gig workers through employment standards, removing the flexibility from that would bring more negative than positive changes. Only thing the government should review, perhaps, is whether the company is paying the drivers and whether it's fair or not, and whether or not the expenses are accounted for. Some drivers talked about why they need the flexibility. One driver said that the ability to have flexibility of income and working hours at my discretion is the only way my wife and I are able to remain out of the grasp of bankruptcy in this province. We are forced to live where we are, so our rent does not increase, and we cannot afford childcare, nor do we qualify for benefits. We need to be able to work the flexibility to make up the difference and care for our children. Another driver said, I love the work as a ride-hail driver because the main reason is flexibility. I have a small baby. I am doing babysitting as well. Whenever I get the time, I drive and earn money because there are no limitations. Another driver said, I'm a retired Vancouver firefighter, and I choose to work as a driver after retiring because I want to work when, where, and if I want. I have 3 children in high school. My family's important, and I want to spend time with them. Another ride-hail driver has said, Dear Madam, I am a full-time ride-hail driver. I started driving since the very beginning when the company started here in BC. I enjoy the flexibility, and it's very important to all drivers so we can choose to drive whenever we want to and accept or decline the trips we wish. Another driver told me about having an autistic child and having to be available, which means the flexibility offered by this kind of work is important. Another driver said that to make ends meet, she has 2 other jobs, and so she needs to be able to fit this in around those jobs. And it goes on and on and on. Now, perhaps there's some confusion about where I'm coming from here. The point is that the digital technology that makes it possible for a working relationship such as this was inconceivable and unimaginable when employment standards, or for that matter, collective agreements, were first contemplated. These kinds of jobs, ride-hail jobs, food delivery jobs, app-based jobs, are unique and new in our economy. Some of the standards, like minimum pay, the right to keep tips, workers' compensation, pay transparency, and a fair disciplinary process, are easily transferable from the economy and the work relations we know to the new app-based economy and new work relations. And our plan, contrary to some of the worry and speculation that's been expressed so far, our plan is to provide those protections as soon as possible. We know that by going out and engaging with the workers, we have raised expectations. We have identified, we have invited them to tell us what their concerns are. And we've raised expectations, and we want to fix those problems as soon as possible. But there are other standards, like leave, like benefits, that are more complicated because they work for more than one employer at the same time. They're logged on to more than one app at the same time. And it will take a bit of study, and it will take more information for us to figure out how to apply those rightful benefits in a work context that does not have defined hours of work. But, and as you know, the member from Kamloops North Thompson, himself pointed out in his engagement in this debate what many of those complexities are. So I believe that we will get there. But I believe that those workers are suffering now, and it's really important that we don't wait to figure out how we apply the traditional work relations to at-based work relations. We cannot wait to get it all perfect. We have to do what we can now, which is what is contemplated in the regulations that the minister talked about, and then we will work on the ones that are more complex. Ontario passed legislation. They passed their law more than a year ago, and it is still not enforced because they're still trying to work it out. We don't want to do that. We want to move faster. We believe that perfection is the enemy of the good. This legislation is a first step, and it's designed to address the most egregious problems. And we will continue to engage with the drivers, the companies, the drivers' advocates, to come up with standards that protect their rights and protect the flexibility that they value. So in conclusion, while digital technology may change the conditions of the working relationship, it does not change the inherent power imbalance between the workers and the companies, as the leader of the third party pointed out quite dramatically and quite eloquently. It's not, it's what changes that imbalance. Unions do that, and labor laws do that. We live in a province and in a country in which I think we can agree that workers are not expected to subsidize the companies for which they work. And I think that we can, I'd hope that we can all agree that the workers nor the customers are expected to subsidize the profits of the at-based companies. Thank you.